Now, earlier in the day, I read this story. Rod Liddle is a friend of this show, comes on quite often, and I always enjoy talking to him. Great writer, great columnist. Sunday Times, Spectator, The Sun. Not apparently beloved by some of the students, of your fellow students at Durham, who wanted to no platform him because he was booked to make a speech to South College. So the South College to its good for South College because they said no, he's going to speak. But of course he was heckled, and then the students walked out. And then Professor Tim Luckhurst, another guy we've had on this show, he shouted at South College, "We value freedom of speech." And as the students left, he also shouted, "Pathetic." And now, of course, he's had to apologise, or he has apologised for that in the time-honoured fashion. What do you reckon of all this? Basically, Rod Liddle made a speech. He's got a right to do that, and I don't like it when students want to deprive people of their right to free speech.
Well, so South are actually my neighbouring college at Durham. So I go to a college called Butler, and South are actually next door. So I knew about this quite a while ago. And I think that Tim should not have apologised for calling them pathetic, because their behaviour was indeed pathetic. I'm actually just sick and tired of students at Durham trying to determine who we shouldn't have on campus. I want these people, I want to be able to go to university and hear these views. That's what I pay for, and they're taking it away from us, and it's really winding me up.
And Durham's something called Durham's Working Class Students Association called for the event, the whole event where Rod spoke, to be investigated by the university. And it said in the statement, transphobia and racism cannot be defended under the notion of political views. Here's the problem. Rod Liddle is neither transphobic nor is he a racist. So where do they get off accusing him of that? In fact, it's libelous.
Well, unfortunately, that group aren't my biggest fans either.
I bet they're not.
No, they're really not. But where I feel like this entire situation is going to, because the university actually are now going to investigate it.
Sorry to interrupt, Sophie. On what basis?
That the event was inappropriate, and the things that were spoken about go against the university's guidelines, and that Tim obviously calling them pathetic was not good.
I know that Rod began his speech by making a joke, saying that he was disappointed there were no sex workers there, because of course the dons of Durham have deemed that it's a great idea for hard-up students to be taught about sex work, how to be sex workers, in case that's the method they use to pay their bills, turning to prostitution. So Rod kicked off by making a joke about that, and frankly, I think that deserves to have a joke made about it, don't you think?
Yeah, and this entire situation is now becoming very mirroring of the Kathleen Stock thing. So there are protests planned on Wednesday to protest about Tim Luckhurst. They want him to resign. Students have said that in the best case scenario, he will not be in the post come Christmas. I actually sent the photo of the protest to Tim in advance so he can see it, because we have spoke. There's things in the windows basically saying, we don't want transphobes here at Durham. Again, very similar to what happened again with Kathleen Stock. So it's becoming very mirroring of this. And I think that the Kathleen Stock sort of, proved to students that irrespective of what a university's values are or the university's position on this, students have the power to bully, harass and hound staff that they do not agree with out of a job. And it happened with Kathleen Stock, and it's happening again here at Durham. It's becoming very, very similar. We're seeing exact things coming out now.
It's extraordinary. Now, responding to an email from a student complaint, Tim Luckhurst, he's a former BBC executive. I've had him on my show quite a lot to discuss the BBC. He responded to this complaint saying, my guest's topic, that's Rod Liddle of course, my guest's topic was tolerance. He spoke about the importance of listening to alternative perspectives. He attacked nobody. We have no right not to be offended, but offence doesn't harm us. And freedom of speech means nothing unless it encompasses the right to say things with which others disagree profoundly. He's got a good point, hasn't he?
He has, and he's one of the very few lecturers that push this. And in actual fact, another thing that's very similar to the Kathleen Stock situation is lecturers at my university, including one of my subjects, are now turning against him. And the vice president of the South College has also come out and condemned everything that's happening. So a lot of the staff are also now starting to turn on Tim as well. So it's, like I said, very similar to what's going on with Kathleen Stock.
I mean, he's a nice guy, Tim. I mean, is he under serious pressure? This is one of these campaigns to cancel someone, right? He's under serious pressure to lose his job.
Yep. I think he's a great guy. He's been a great principal of South College. I really also am a big fan of his wife, Dot. And I think this is, again, another attempt of students to sort of use their power to hound a staff member out of the position. It's incredibly frustrating. I think, yeah, I feel quite strongly towards him. They're trying to blame him for comments that his wife made, which I think is very sort of
Maoist.
Backwards, because, you know, Dot is a grown woman. She's able to make her own points.
Absolutely.
And she called them a bunch of inadequates, and I think that's why she's now my favourite woman on this earth, because she is absolutely correct in that.
Listen, I wanted to just move on to some other student capers. Down at, well, I did a story last week, you probably noticed it, where all these students at Aberdeen University, they put in trigger warnings on books, classic works of literature, like Robert Louis Stevenson's 19th century novel, Kidnapped. The warning is, warning, contains scenes of kidnapping. There was a warning on Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's play. It contains scenes of insurrection and murder. So these trigger warnings are, you know, for snowflakes are ridiculous in themselves. But I found a really good one today. Cambridge University student newspaper, The Varsity, has started putting trigger warnings onto newspaper articles. So they did a story about a big problem in universities at the moment, the spiking of student drinks and potential sexual assault, and the article contained this trigger warning. Content note: this article contains discussion of spiking and sexual harassment. Well, it would, wouldn't it? It's a story about spiking and sexual harassment. What are these trigger warnings about? They're sort of asinine, aren't they?
I think they're just posturing. I think if you are at that stage where you are so fragile that a storybook will deeply affect you, I don't really quite know how on earth that you're cut out for university, let alone adult life, to be quite honest with you.
Or life generally, Sophie. I mean, that's what worries me. If you're going to create an environment where young people, I mean, not everybody at university is young, we should say, or not all students are sort of in their 20s, so some are older, but where basically young people are protected from the real world to this ludicrous extent, are absurdly mollycoddled, then they're not going to be ready for the real world when they come out. I mean, it's like picking up a copy of the Times or the Sun or something, and the front page story is about a terrible murder, and there being a big trigger warning in the front saying, warning, this story about murder contains a story about murder. It's absurd.
Yeah, I don't think it's very helpful for students either, because they're now going to leave this academic bubble where, you know, they've cried about speeches, articles, books, everything that they come into sort of contact with, and they're now going to have to leave it and be absolutely torn apart by the world, or they stay in academia forever, which is what a lot of them do, because they can't handle the real world. But it's really just not beneficial. You just imagine those people that had to go and report in those courtrooms with the Arthur case. That was absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
And that's what, if you want to go into, you know, decent proper jobs, then you're gonna face things like this.
Well, bad things happen, and it doesn't help to protect people from them, to say these things don't happen. You go into your safe space and pretend the world is all lovely and fluffy bunny, because it just isn't. So I think it's a very pernicious thing that's going. These trigger warnings, I mean, they act like they're as if the kids are like 3 years old. They're not. They're older than that, and they don't need to be mollycoddled in this way. Great talking to you, Sophie.